If I were to ask you to open your LinkedIn or some news feed right now, I'd wager a bet you would come across at least one, if not several things discussing doom and gloom, largely tied to the narrative that AI is a grim reaper coming to automate all of our jobs and leave everyone on the planet unemployed. Well, I'm Christopher Lind, and this is Future Focused. And this week, I've been spending some time in a brand new report that's hot off the presses, that's analyzing data from over 6,000 companies in 4 of the world's largest economies that seems to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that narrative is dead wrong. And so the problem isn't that AI is necessarily coming for our jobs the way we think it is. But as I dug into something else that came to mind, it seems there may be an even bigger impending problem we're not talking enough about, which is we may be running out of people to do the work that we do today. And AI is definitely not automating things fast enough to save us all. So if you're a leader, I would encourage you to listen up and perhaps stop preparing for mass layoffs and start preparing for survival. Now, if you find this and my content helpful, it would mean the world to me if you subscribed, liked, did all those good things. And if you know somebody who you think would benefit from it, send it to them and say, hey, check it out. And if you really get some value out of it, it would mean the world to me. I do this professionally. You can reach out for help if you need some help, or support me at buymeacoffee.com/Christopher Lind. Okay, so let's transition over. The way I'm structuring today's episode, I'm going to spend some time not going through the entire report, but focusing on some of the key pieces of research I think help illustrate this story, and then breaking down 3 things that I think every organization needs to move up the priority list ASAP if they're going to be prepared for what's ahead. Now, the research itself, it's about a 70-page document. It comes from NBER, which is the National Bureau of Economic Research. You can go download it for free. It's an interesting report, kind of nerdy, which is why I'm going to cut through to some of the biggest noise. But this organization is not a think tank with an agenda. It's not some AI company saying, hey, look at what's happening, obviously, based on the data. They're a private, nonprofit, nonpartisan research org. They are actually the official body that declares when the U.S. is in a recession. So when they say things, for the most part, people listen. And what they did is they surveyed 6,000 firms, and the 4 economies they looked at specifically were the U.S., the UK, Germany, and Australia. And in terms of who it touched, this was largely the most senior decision makers in the organization. 70 to 90% of the responses came from the C-suite. And so this is their perspective on how they're looking at things and the decisions that they're making and what they've seen and what they plan on as they're thinking about the future. So for this first part, there's 4 charts that I really want to focus on. The first part is productivity, and then the actual job impact that we've seen so far. So if I pull up the first one, it's taking a look at what have we seen in terms of productivity impact in the last 3 years. Generative AI really hit the market a little over 3 years ago. And so we've had some time to see what happens. And companies have spent billions of dollars. AI companies have spent billions of dollars of hype. And the impact on all of that so far is pretty much nothing. There's some small impact that we're starting to see, but for the most part, overall average 0.29% of a boost in productivity. That is a far cry from the double-digit gains that many AI companies have been talking about, saying that, we're just seeing this rocket productivity through the roof. It just doesn't match what the data has to say on this. Now, to be clear, I'm not suggesting that it isn't there. This is largely what we see in transformations. You don't see change overnight. However, when you're hearing that everybody's changing, the FOMO of everyone around you has seen all this double-digit improvement to productivity, and then you go, well, we aren't. Well, guess what? Neither are they. Nobody really is. So you can be encouraged by that. But then if you actually look at what are they predicting in the next 3 years, going back to we've got this narrative that AI is just smarter and better than humans all over the place. It's going to replace everybody's jobs. Then you even look at these decision makers' projections on what they're thinking in terms of productivity. How much productivity do they think they're going to get out of this? Gets a little better over the next 3 years, but still mostly no impact to a small positive impact. Senior leaders are banking on this being a slow transition and being fairly conservative from what they're projecting to see. At best, globally, this 6,000 respondents thought 1.44% increase, maybe a little better in the US, a 2.25% increase. That is like a fractional improvement. That is not swapping out massive swaths of your headcount to account for this productivity gains that we're seeing. So the data just doesn't match. Now, if we move away from just the productivity piece and take a look at the actual employment, okay, we've heard the headlines. And yes, we need to have this conversation at a future date about, so wait, what's going on with companies then that are saying we are just eliminating massive percentages of our workforce as a direct response to AI? Once again, the data doesn't match that. Out of these 6,000, the vast majority have no impact. It averages out to nada, zilch. Small negative would be like, yeah, we've maybe gotten rid of a few roles. A small percentage are saying we've maybe done something. The vast majority going, nah, we really haven't done anything as it relates to jobs with this. And that's kind of where it's at. That's over the past 3 years. So despite all this noise about all these jobs that have been cut, all these people that have lost their work because of AI, that's not what the leaders are actually saying. And then if you look at, okay, well, projective wise, what are they planning on? Massive cuts to organizations? Once again, no, they're not. Are they anticipating downsizing? Yes, definitely smaller than you would anticipate, and definitely not the promise of growth that we're hearing. Oh, all the jobs we're getting rid of, AI is going to build new ones. Well, senior leaders don't seem to be feeling that same way. They seem to largely be thinking it's not going to do anything, or it's going to be a reduction in work. And that's just what's coming out of this from a data standpoint. So I want to share that with you so that you can put that in your head when you hear these things. You can filter through that. But then after looking at this and going, okay, well, that data is not matching. That, what I just shared with you right there, is much more consistent with what I'm seeing in my consulting work. People are edge casing, maybe exploring with automation, maybe doing a little bit here and there, but for the most part, we're still very much in experimentation mode and, preparing for what we might be able to do over the next few years. But then we have to talk about this other element that was not part of this research, because after I looked at this, I went, well, now hang on a second, because if we're not seeing those kinds of gains, there is something else that I've been quietly paying attention to. But if companies are only planning to shrink by, I think it said something like roughly 1% due to AI, what are they planning on doing when 5% of the workforce, maybe even more, may be retiring in that exact same time period? So they may be cutting these jobs, but are they taking into account how many people are actually exiting the workforce right now? And it's not in this report, but this is a major impending crisis that's coming. So I did a little napkin math, a little bit of research on this. And if you think about, I'll just hit a couple examples of this to illustrate how serious this is when you think about this marginal impact on jobs as a direct result of AI. When you look at the US, we've got a workforce of about 168 million. So if 1.2% are reduced as a result of AI, that's about 670,000 jobs eliminated by AI. That's a sizable number. Okay, it's concerning. I completely understand why people are anxious when they hear those numbers. I get it. Granted, it doesn't account for new jobs being created, but let's just pretend we aren't creating anything new. That's a lot of jobs. However, the gray tsunami is looming. Okay. I know right now there's a lot of people who just aren't leaving the workforce because things are uncertain and it's a little wild. So everybody's kind of sticking around, but it's looming. It's coming. And peak boomer retirements are going to be about 3 million people a year from that supply. So the 168 million, 3 million of those are out each year due to retirement. That's the projection of that number there. So on top of that, we're going to be eliminating 670,000 jobs as a result of AI. You don't have to do much research to look at the size of the incoming workforce and just even birth rate data. If you go, well, maybe it'll correct itself in another generation, not based on what's happening right now. So if you start looking at that significant cliff of workers going out in the US with what's coming in, we've got a massive gap, like a massive gap right there. Same thing was true in Germany. I looked over in Germany. They are expecting about a 0.7% drop as a result of AI. 100,000 jobs, not great, not feeling good about that. But they're currently, right now, losing their workforce so fast. They need 4,000 immigrants a year just to keep the lights on with AI. AI is not even making a dent on that. Australia, same thing. 0.7% drop due to AI. 250,000 Australians are retiring every year for the next decade. That is a lot of people leaving the workforce right now. That means that even with AI, we have a negative labor gap. So is AI taking some jobs? Yes, sort of, kind of, not the way we think. If you watched last week's episode, I really laid out this remote labor index that shows AI is not really taking jobs as in a 1-for-1 ratio. If you didn't see that episode, I'd highly encourage you to go check that out or check out the article I wrote about it on Substack, because the data doesn't match that either. But so not only is AI not really taking jobs, it's not really impacting productivity the way we think. And then on top of it, we've got this massive negative labor gap that's about to hit us as people start retiring, because people aren't working forever. You don't work forever. It doesn't matter what happens. That's just not reality. And so AI isn't going to be able to plug the leak like everybody thinks. We actually right now should be fighting for talent, not worrying about a war with the robots. If anything, we should be trying to go, we need to do a better job how to figure out how to work with these folks, these robots, because if we don't, we're in some real trouble in the future here. And I don't know, going back to my opening, that if you scroll LinkedIn or any newsfeed, I don't know that I've encountered a single article in the last, I don't even know how long. I think I maybe saw one fringe article that I took a bunch of heat on YouTube for 2 years ago where I talked about this, and everybody's like, boo, yeah, no, that's never going to happen. I'm like, okay, this is coming for us. And so this is not being paid attention to, and it should be, because you need to be preparing for this. This is an inevitability. This labor exit, it's an inevitability. You can't go, I don't really believe that. You might be able to do that about the impending robot apocalypse if you're buying that narrative. But that's a hypothetical. People getting older and retiring and exiting the workforce it's a reality that you can't escape that. So with the rest of the time, and I'm going to write a Substack article to go, a little bit more on this. So follow that if you're not. But there's 3 things that I'm going to make the case. Every leader, every senior leader, every employee, like literally everybody, this needs to be like an all hands on deck. We need to focus our attention on these 3 things or we're all in trouble. And this is a code red on workforce planning right now. This first one is probably more targeted at the senior decision makers and people leaders who may be planning. Right now, a lot of people are doing lazy planning. And I don't want to say lazy as in they're not doing what they should be. Workforce planning isn't new. If the term is unfamiliar to you, it's work that a lot of time is driven by HR, where they're trying to project out what do we need, what jobs are we going to plan for. Sometimes it's an annual activity. Sometimes you're doing this 3 to 5 years. But most organizations, they're trying to do their best. But right now, it's been so crazy. This has gotten a little lax. In my experience and in the consulting that I'm doing, we're not doing the kind of workforce planning that I think is necessary. And that's obvious because this conversation is often not being talked about enough. But compounding that, we're in a employer's market right now, which also isn't helping. It's it's like when you get a little tight around the belt because you've kind of quit working out. Well, we're in an employer's market. And so employers are a little bit comfortable right now with the fact that, people aren't really going to leave. When we put out a job posting, we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants right now. Right. Because the economy is super uncertain. There's been a lot of layoffs. People aren't really sure what they're doing. And so people aren't leaving. They're not just quitting and going, I'll figure it out. But that's not going to last forever. And when you think about this crisis, you can't really predict when it's going to hit. If all of a sudden a large group of your people want to retire, you can't go, no, it's just going to happen. And so a lot of leaders are operating in this kind of arrogant complacency that we're good now. Why would we be all that concerned about it? And they're ignoring this exit ramp. So if you are a senior leader and you don't know and have not clearly laid out and planned for who exactly and how many people are going to be walking out the door in the next 36 months, you are flying dangerously blind. So my advice to anybody who is involved in that, or if this is the first time you're going, well, you know what, we haven't really thought about our workforce planning. Maybe you're a smaller organization and it's not something that's built into it. I've spent my time around a lot of the big Fortune companies, and this is more of a normal activity. I know that as I've started to breach into S&Bs and things like that, it's not as much of a muscle that they're familiar with. So now is a really good time to run a pulse audit on your workforce plans. Don't just count your current head count. Don't just look at your current departures, your natural attrition rate, and go, well, this is about how many people quit over the last 12 months. So let's just carry that forward. I would not only look at, okay, well, what happens if economic times come? If your engagement scores are in the toilet and people aren't terribly happy and are a bit disgruntled with things, and then the economy gets better, you better multiply that natural attrition rate by a lot. And then you also need to be counting in there who is of age to retire. And are we at risk of this? Which everybody is, including some of the people who probably are doing this analysis. And then map that against your 1.2% efficiency gain. That fill that you might get from AI and go, I guarantee if you actually do this exercise, you're going to see we got a gap, and it's a sizable one. And it's not going to be one that I think you're going to want to just hire your way out of when that shortage starts to hit, because the reality is the talent pool isn't going to be there. And if you wait until the crisis hits and then you go looking to try and compete against a labor shortage to fill your gaps, not only is that going to be a problem, but if you wait until this hits, you're not even going to know what skills and people you need to fill the gaps. And you're certainly, let's not forget the fact that when you hire someone, no matter how seasoned of an expert they are, they still need to learn your internal inner workings, the way your organization operates, the way you prioritize, the way you do things. That takes time. You don't want to be trying to rush that because you kicked this whole planning trap down the road and went, things are good right now. And that is our natural tendency. When things are good, we tend to sit back, we tend to wait. And then we wait until, we wait to do a diet until we have a heart attack. And that's essentially what we're doing right now. Our cholesterol levels are up. Our, resting heart rate is through the roof. Our belt size has increased significantly, and we're going, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'll just, start doing P90X when things hit. And that's just not a viable strategy. Now, if this is something that you're not familiar with or you're uncomfortable with, reach out. I spent a lot of time. I advise a lot of HR organizations on how to do this well, how to take these things into account. And so if you need help, do it. If you need an outside perspective, give me a call. But whatever you do, don't ignore this lazy planning trap. It will come back to bite you because, like I said before, this gray tsunami is an inevitability. It's not optional. It's coming. It's a matter of when and have you prepared for it. And the runway is longer than you think to get ready and to cover this gap. Now, the second one is the surgical versus this kind of casual kick the tires AI. Now, I said there was a few charts. There's one I want to bring in to talk about this one in particular, because I think many people are still missing this, which is we have to talk about the actual use of AI. This is another chart from that report. But when you actually look at it, and I did another podcast, I don't remember, this validates another research report I looked at. I don't remember how long ago it was, but very similar. When you look at the respondents, okay, I've got a whole conversation to have about the fact that, a third of the people responding don't use AI at all. So what's the influence of that? But either way, when you look at how these survey respondents are using AI, they're only using it for like an hour and a half a week. This is casual use. Up to an hour a week is the average, maybe a little bit more than that, but a lot, not at all. So I know, once again, everybody's talking about AI is everywhere. Everybody's using it. Everybody's, changing their work. Everybody this and that. When you actually look at the data, and this isn't just senior leaders, this is when you actually look at your workforce, there's not a whole lot of real meaningful transformation going on. There's a lot of tinkering. One of the biggest things I see is organizations are maybe releasing the latest version of some of their major software systems that have some new AI features. And they've maybe sent out a memo announcing, hey, you now have this capability. Organizations may be implementing Google Gemini as part of their Google suite, or Copilot with Microsoft, although Copilot's data is not great. So I don't know anybody with Copilots actually doing much with it. But once again, that is a large part of the AI work that's happening. And let me just tell you from my consulting work, that's not where the transformation's happening. I will just tell you that right now. If you actually want to see transformation, you got to get surgical with, here's a real problem that we need to transform, and figure out, where does AI fit? How do people fit? What skills do they need? Like, how do we actually do this and actually have it be successful in what it does, not just base it off of potential? So you've got that. You've got to get really surgical if you want to see serious transformation. But then even with these tinkering things, I have a thing called the AI effectiveness rating, which is designed to assess, like, how well do people even know how to use these AI tools you're handing them. And I'll tell you, in my research, the data is not great. People are not terribly effective with these tools. So we're giving them these general tools and saying, here you go do this. And they don't really know how to be terribly effective with it, which is largely contributing to some of the data we're seeing of, like, well, why is it not improving productivity? Well, because even if they're using it, they're probably not using it very well. So there's massive opportunity to increase the productivity and fill some gaps with improving effectiveness of people. But then we've also got to focus more on these serious surgical AI transformations where you've actually done your workforce planning and you go, we've got a massive impending talent gap coming right here, and there's no pool of labor to pull from. So let's get surgical and figure out, where can AI come in and radically close the gap of how some of that work gets done, so we can do it with less people not because we're eliminating jobs, but because there's not people to fill the labor pool that we're going to need moving forward. So how do we do that? Well, then how do we in parallel prepare people to be able to work alongside that in a way that actually closes the gap? Because if we don't do this, the tinkering is going to lead to a lot of businesses needing to close up shop, not because their products aren't relevant, not because there's not a need for them, but because they just don't have people to do it. So as we move forward, I would encourage you to move from users to pilots. Like, yes, you need to get your users adopting it, and they are, but you need to get them adopting it effectively. And if my AER or my help can be of service, great, reach out. But no matter what, you've got to get the people who are using AI to use it effectively, and the ones who aren't to start using it and using it effectively. But then you've also got to start moving to these transformational pilots. They've got to be surgical. You got to have measurable outcomes defined, saying, here's what we're trying to solve for and why, and how we're going to know if we were successful on the other side. You're not going to mitigate this iceberg. You're not going to dodge this iceberg by having a handful of super users and a massive casual class of people who are tinkering around with AI, potentially boosting their productivity by a fraction of a percent. And so, again, if you need help, please reach out. But more than anything, just do something around this. The third and final one, and this is one that has been looming forever, that we've been a little thick around the waist for a long time, but we've got to do something serious. And this is our leadership emergency. Because it's not just your broad-based workforce that's going to be retiring and leaving. It's going to be your senior leaders. It's going to be your seniored folks, the seasoned folks that have been doing this for decades. I was running a project with GE a couple years ago where we were running into this as a major crisis. All of our senior repair folks, all of our operators who knew how to work on the equipment, they're like, I'm done. I've been doing this for multiple decades. I don't want to do it anymore. My back can't take it. I'm just tired, and I've saved up enough. I can finally go. Those are the people who are leaving your organization. Your senior most decision makers, the one that have been around the block, they know how the company's operating. And yes, some of those folks, it'll be good when they're gone. But you can't just have them be gone and then nobody knows what happened. The junior staff you have today is largely inexperienced. And right now, if you were to do an analysis of what your leaders are doing and how they're spending your time, I can almost guarantee they are not spending the chunk of time they need to be on developing the people that they're leading and the ones around them. They're not transferring that knowledge they have. They're not building them up, preparing for their own departure. And right now, if your senior leaders and your seasoned folks are so busy doing the work, they're too busy to be mentoring the junior folks, you are cooked. Because when those senior folks retire and their 30 years of institutional knowledge walks right out the door, you've got a very, very, very long runway to catch your newer folks up on, okay, now not only are we teaching you what you got to do, but we got to teach you all the context, and we got nobody to teach you with. And this concern that I'm crying out, this calls to the people in my generation, the millennials, the older Gen Zers, the Gen Xers. I think some of the Gen Xers too are going to have to deal with this, because we're the ones who are now going to be saddled with this if we don't start pushing it now. So we've got to flip the apprenticeship model. We can't just say, let's use AI to replace our junior folks. You need to use AI to do the drafting work and let the juniors do that so they can spend time with the senior leaders, and the senior leaders can then focus their attention on coaching. You got to get these senior leaders out of the work, the seasoned folks out of the work, get the junior folks doing this alongside AI so the senior folks can coach, mentor. They're the ones, these seasoned folks are the ones that can watch an AI output and go, yeah, I know that looks good on paper, but let me tell you why in 30 years that's never worked. What it suggested, it's pulling off historical data. You know why? Because we've done that pilot 389 times and it's failed 389 times. So I know it's saying, no, just do it again. This time, make this tweak. I'm telling you, here's the reasons it won't work. You need that institutional knowledge being transferred, and you've got to figure out what apprenticeship looks like. And so you've got to do that. You've got to do like a shift in how your senior and seasoned folks are spending their time. You can't just say, we want you to be mentoring the less seasoned folks. You need to actually build a plan for it and show them how to do it and prepare them for it and make that part of their job responsibility. Because if you're just saying do it when it works, they're not going to find the time. They're not going to prioritize it because there's enough chaos and noise going on. That'll be the thing that always gets pushed down the line. And you need to build your leadership muscles right now. You have to build a development engine that is going to not only catch up with the attrition rate, but overtake it so that you're prepared when it finally hits. And once again, if you need help with this stuff, reach out. I've spent my career developing skills and leaders. There is a way to do it, and there's a way to do it that is much faster and more efficient than the way we've historically done it. So if you're hearing this last one, you're going, great, let's spin up a bunch of leadership workshops that we offer once a month. I'm telling you, that's not going to, first of all, one, it's not going to do anything meaningful. And two, any fractional improvement you may see out of that is not going to keep up pace. So I hope that this additional data and these three things have compelled you to think a little bit differently about the inevitable crisis that is looming. There is a talent crisis looming. I mean, there's no denying the workplace Grim Reaper is standing at the door with his sigh, just waiting. But it's not the one everybody's looking at. Everybody's looking at the hypothetical boogeyman over in the corner. And that boogeyman is not there, and it's not the one you think it is. So please take a look at the report. Don't just take my word for it. Go dig into it, but you'll see this isn't just Christopher trying to freak you out. This is an impending crisis that's coming, and you need to take the 3 steps. You need to do surgical planning on your workforce. You need to actually look at this and not just operate off the numbers in this report, but go, what does this look like for our organization? I don't know the demographics of your organization. I don't know how many people close to retirement age you have specifically. It's going to look different in different industries, different. You need to do that work. Don't operate off a report or off this podcast. Let this podcast be the catalyst that makes you go, you know what? We need to do that. Get surgical with AI. Make your people effective with the tools you're giving them, and then get really surgical about prioritizing. Hey, what are the 3 most important things we should be focusing on surgically with AI, not just to nickel and dime some productivity increases, but to radically transform the way we do business based on where are we going to have labor gaps we can't close, and we're going to get the biggest lift out of AI. That's what you need to do. And the third is get your apprenticeship, mentoring, leadership development in place, because boy, you need to do that, and you need to get what's in your senior leaders' heads out before they retire, or you're in serious trouble. So I know this may be a little more of an alarmist podcast than usual. I'm not intending to. I'm just trying to emphasize the inevitability of what's coming to hopefully stir in you something to not wait until you have a heart attack to actually do something about it. The headlines everywhere want you panicking about AI taking jobs. I want you to be panicking about the inaction of what is for sure coming regardless of what happens to AI. Regardless of what happens. Because I can tell you right now, based on the work I do and the data I see, AI is not coming and taking the work of double-digit percentages of employees. It's just not. That's not what's happening. It's not going to this year. It's not in the next few years. It's not for a long time, if ever. So don't be the leader or don't be in the organization that doesn't take action on this until the desks in your buildings are already empty and you're scrambling to figure out what to do about it. So I'm Christopher Lind. This has been Future Focused. And if I can help, don't hesitate to reach out. With that, I'll see you on the other side.